Hey, Sofia, I'm so excited that you're here.
Hi, Libby.
Hi. Listen, we're at the crux of Cannes, which is, creativity, awards, technology, everything intersecting. It's so much fun. It's so wonderful. But, there's a big macro conversation that's happening right now that I know you're really passionate about. And it's that tension between efficiency and creativity.
Yes.
Can you talk about that? I'm really curious your point of view.
Yes. By the way, I love how you led into that with a big but, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly that. We know that we are here to celebrate creativity. Yet what I'm seeing in the industry, and I work with CMOs all over the world,
Right.
is this constant pressure on them to optimize their budgets, to make sure that they can tell an ROI story on every single dollar they spend. And what I'm seeing happening as a result is creativity is really in crisis, because that is where this, budget cut impact is happening. So we're starting to spend less on creativity and more on performance. Now, I'm a businesswoman, right? And I fundamentally understand that we work for companies and companies are in the business of making money, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't be paying attention to return on investment, to the impact that our efforts are having, but we cannot sacrifice creativity, because that's what makes everything interesting. And frankly, that's how brands truly connect with their audiences.
Yeah. Well, so it's so interesting because in our research, we see we're in this big connection crisis, and, people have become disconnected from each other, but they're also becoming disconnected from brands. Like, brands have become so transactional with people. And how does creativity play in the role of that, right? Like, if brands are always optimizing towards a number and not a human, how does that relationship, how do they foster that relationship? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think you're seeing that in your research, and also just that's what we're experiencing, because what has happened with people and culture is they're kind of tired of the bullshit.
Yeah.
And they want to act and react more authentically with each other. I think TikTok has been a platform to really drive a lot of that. The TikTok community is hyper engaged, is really supportive, is like really kind of leaning in because they feel joy, they like to be entertained, they like to engage with each other. I was just interviewing Risa Tisa, and she was talking about how, like the reason she put out that story is because she had responded to another creator's ask to tell like a terrible date story or whatever. And she did in a stitch. And then the community was like, we want to hear more.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what inspired her to put out that series that is now, by the way, becoming a television show.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So that is the way people are engaging with each other. And their expectation is that brands show up that way too. So I tell brands all the time, I'm like, great, you need to think like marketers, ship cases, ROI, et cetera, but you need to act more like creators.
Yeah.
And creators have really mastered how to connect with their audiences in a way that is very authentic and very influential.
So it's really interesting because something we're seeing in leadership is like, so leaders had IQ, then EQ, and now they need agility quotient, the AQ. When creators have that.
Oh, I like that.
And creators have that in spades, but marketers are like they've learned the emotional quotient for a while, but it's like emotion plus agility is kind of what you're talking about, isn't it?
I think we're in a situation where, like a lot of the people that work at big brands have been doing it for a while, right?
Yeah.
A lot of us learned from the marketing books of the 90s and early 2000s. And the reality is like that has all shifted over the last 5 years.
Right.
And so, by the way, if you're in university and you're learning from those books, burn them.
Yeah.
Because that's not the reality of today. So a lot of the best practices that we learned are not best practices anymore. And when you talk about agility, that is very present because creators have definitely come in and created content in spades, right? Big marketers don't know how to do that. It feels very cumbersome. In fact, big agencies are also struggling with this because they're still very much thinking about production of the past, which is let's hire a director, let's work with a big production company. Now we have to edit it over the next few weeks, right? And creators are doing that in a matter of hours and days.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the industry has headed, and that's the pressure that's being put on brands. Now, I do think there's a solution, right? We all used to say good, fast, cheap. You can't have all three, but I do believe you can. You can do great work. You can do it quickly, and you can do it in an inexpensive way because there's all this new technology, AI included, right? That's helping to automate a lot of that.
Well, I was going to ask you, can you share us your point of view on where AI can help and how that kind of unleashes some of that either ROI or creativity from your
for
mindset?
Sure. So I know some people in the industry have taken a stance on AI around like it's going to replace everyone, right? And it's and like, you know, in a lot of ways, people are under the perception that like people won't matter anymore. We actually don't feel that way. We believe that at the core of creativity are humans and human insights and ideas and passions. And the tools are really exist to empower them to do things faster, cheaper, right? Better. And so, you know, the creative tools out there, ours included, and we just launched this actually today, this morning here at Cannes. We have a tool where you can put your microphone, right? A still photo of your microphone. And then type in a prompt that says, I want to see a hand, grab the microphone, pick it up to a mouth and speak. And that happens through AI.
Oh, wow.
And so, you know, there was still a human that took the initial photograph, right? And you fed that in as original content. And then there's so much you can do to play with it. I mean, that alone, right? Is so powerful.
So, you know, that makes me think of, there's this paradigm shift that people talk about, and I can't remember who said it. So sorry about this, but she said it shifts from the doer to the director. So it's unleashing all these young creators or marketers to be more of the directors than having to do all the things. And that could unleash a whole world of creativity and human discernment, right?
It does. It also, by the way, and this is very top of mind because it's part of the conversation I'm having with CMOs, it also means that internally they have to operate differently, right? So we're used to either partnering with agencies, building our own in-house agencies, but even the idea of what an agency does has evolved. And we're building these tools to empower brands for sure, but also to empower agencies to be that innovative partner again to their clients, to the brands.
Yeah, and you grew up in the agency world, so you kind of remember this. Like, what's your like one piece of hope or optimism to give to marketers, or how they could reset their thinking about this?
I say this a lot, actually. I think as marketers, we're very good at being students of culture, right? So we'll read your reports, we'll work with, you know, a data science company, et cetera, but we're not very good at being practitioners of culture, right? And so, you know, you think about CMOs like Corey, Marchesotto at Elf, or So Young King at EOS, or even Craig at American Eagle, Chipotle. These are all brands and marketers that are in the platform every day themselves, right? And they fundamentally understand what their audience is like, how they're behaving, and it's not because they wrote a report, it's because they are where the people are. And this is a really interesting stat. 71% of users on TikTok say they want brands on the platform.
Wow.
This is, I mean, you know the data. You know how much people like hate ads, are trying to turn them off whenever they can. If brands can show up like creators and engage and entertain and really, you know, like show up that way, creating joyful experiences, really delivering it quality information, then people want to be around them.
So I think what's so interesting about that is all brands have talked about authenticity forever, but what you just said is the definition of modern authenticity, right? Like being there one-to-one and getting it all done and like having those conversations with the actual consumer.
Yes, and I think, and in real time, by the way. That's another buzzword that we've talked about for a long time, but we still very much planned our 12-month plans, 16-month plans. One thing I think is pretty fundamental in this shift is, yes, how we're behaving as marketers, but also who we're partnering with to really connect with these audiences. And so definitely creators, I believe, are the next evolution of marketing best practices. Like they've figured it out. They know how to connect with these audiences. They know how to make content ongoingly. This is a challenge for bigger brands. You know who it's not really a challenge for? SMBs.
Oh, interesting.
Because they're just like very fluid. They're very scrappy, and they haven't been, bogged down with all the old school best practices.
Yes.
And so they really lean into the platform, and TikTok has been a huge platform for small businesses to really take off. And it's because they've like mastered how to really connect with people.
Which is the engine of at least the U.S. economy, SMBs.
Yes,
So
I agree.
Thank you for your work there. Well, Sofia, it was so nice talking to you. I'm so happy we're here today, and thank you for being here.
Love chatting with you always, Libby. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem.